Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I will call into open session this meeting of the Arlington Independent School District Board of Trustees for November the 7th, beginning at 7:11 p.m. I want to thank everyone for coming out to join us this evening. We will start our meeting with the open ceremony. Dr. Reich, please join Dr. Reich in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Please be seated. Please silence cell phones and electronic devices to avoid disruptions to those around you. And now at this time, if you would please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. So our first item on the agenda this evening is a performance by the Remynse Elementary School Drum Club. Ms. Foster, please.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. President Mays, Dr. Cavazos, members of the board, everybody here, everybody watching on the broadcast. This is going to be an incredibly special treat. Do y'all see all these drums? Do you remember when you used to threaten your family members, I'm going to get them a drum? You know, in this case, it was a really good move because they are amazing. This is the Remynse Drum Club. Their instructor is in the back. That's Becky Myers. She's yes, waving to us. Thank you. She's been in this business for 20 years, been at Remynse for 4 years, and actually founded the drum club for these kids to be able to participate. They're an elite audition group. They have 25th and 6th grade members. They meet before school every Tuesday and Thursday morning for about 20 minutes. And then they have 8 to 10 performances that they do every year, and they go all over. They played at the Sam Houston High School Taste of Latin America, the Martin Luther King Jr. Extravaganza, Sam Houston High School Black History Month celebration. They've even been over at the Levitt Pavilion here in Arlington, and a lot of school functions all across the district. So tonight, you're going to be dazzled with a performance that's a Tabano drum routine to It's America by Rodney Atkins. Take it away, Drum Corps.
Thank you, Remynse Drum Club. Thank you, Ms. Myers. Thank you. Now that should have got your heart beating. That was very good. Next on our agenda is Student of the Month. Where's Ms. Foster? Well, let me welcome you to the microphone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krieger. Please.
Board President Mays, Dr. Cavazos, member of the board, I would like to thank the board for this incredible opportunity to recognize one of our many amazing, great students that we have at our campus. Today, we recognize sophomore Paola Santos as our Student of the Month. She stands out both in her high school and her college classrooms, but to speak just of her classroom performance would not do her justice. She brings a positive, unstoppable work ethic to our campus each and every day. The teachers here in attendance can certainly testify to that. She asks why and why not all the time, and she's always wondering how things can be done better, how things are being done, and why they're being done a certain way. She demonstrates a servant's heart every day on this campus, and she's always willing to go above and beyond for our students and their daily experiences. Our teachers describe her as dedicated, inquisitive, optimistic, and the embodiment of a growth mindset. Two hallmark beliefs at our campus are for students to work through adversities is they always need to make sure that they're having 100% effort and also have a great attitude each and every day at our campus that can find success that they're looking for. She exemplifies these every day. We're very fortunate to have her as one of our students. I feel very fortunate to be her principal. She comes in each and every day and does exactly what we're looking for, and she exemplifies that. And she exemplifies that to her classmates, and her classmates look up to her all the time, even if she doesn't fully realize that too. So we are very excited, both her teachers as well as myself, what she's going to accomplish in her future here as she's a sophomore this year, and she's going to be doing even bigger and better things here. So I'd like to put our hands together here in congratulating Ms. Paola Santos. Good job. Good job. Good job. Congratulations. Thank you. Anything you want to say?
Pretty much.
Ms. Paola, we would love to hear you say something on the microphone.
I can guarantee you, at campus, she is not quiet.
I'm honored to be here, and thank you for this great opportunity. That's it.
Very good. Would you like to introduce anyone that came with you this evening?
Sure. So you already know my principal. These are my parents. My mother's name is Paula, and my father's name is Rafael. And then over there are my teachers. So the one on the front is Miss Burke, or Miss Nims, sorry, and her son. And then there's Miss Klaus. Then there's my counselor. And then there's Miss Cloud. And that's it.
Very good. Well, congratulations. If you don't mind, Dr. Cavazos and I would like to come down and take a picture and give you something.
Yeah, great.
Giving her a pin. This is a pin that we wear. This is a pin that we give to individuals that we feel are projecting positivity in the community and in our schools. And obviously you have done that, and a lot of other people think that you have as well. So here's the pin to you from us.
Thank you.
Paola, this is also an award for you and your recognition, and thank you for being an outstanding student and a demonstration of what students can aspire to be. And that's what you demonstrate every day. So congratulations to you.
It's really nice to see the teachers coming out to support their principal and the student as well. I enjoyed seeing that. Okay, next on our agenda is our Community Engaged for Excellence Award of Appreciation. Mr. Paras, please come to the microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
Tonight, we're going to be recognizing Dental Health Arlington and their SMILES program, and I'll let you go because I'll keep talking.
President Mays, Dr. Cavazos, members of the board, it truly is a pleasure to recognize a longstanding partner with the Arlington community and Arlington ISD. I myself have had an opportunity to work with this group for probably the last 15 years, going back from my current role and back to my previous role as well. So they've been truly, truly helpful in our community. And so for those that don't know about Dental Health Arlington is a local nonprofit, low-cost dental resource serving Southeast Tarrant County. And they've been serving families since 1992. Originally, they were founded by local community leaders, dentists, dental hygienists, and dental assistants. DHA has developed into a system over years that serves over 2,500 patients a year and provides all levels of comprehensive, preventative, and restorative dental services, a great service for the community. A DHA signature program that directly supports Arlington ISD students is the SMILES program, and SMILES stands for Sealing Molars, Improves the Lives of Every Student. And as a dad, I can attest to that. Under this program, a SMILES team comprised of a dentist, dental hygienist, and volunteers visits elementary schools in our community to educate children on the key importance of dental health. Made possible by the generosity of the aforementioned volunteers and sponsors, the SMILES program impacts our first through third grade students at 39 of our Title I campuses by providing these free preventative services every year. And so this is kind of how it works. The SMILES program utilizes the following model. These provided services are delivered directly on the campus with portable dental equipment similar to a mobile military dental unit. And I've seen it firsthand. It's really impressive. They come in swooping in like troops, really. And so they also provide oral hygiene instruction to first and second and third graders with age-appropriate information and a low student-to-teacher ratio directly to the classrooms. So first they come in and they provide that direct instruction on oral hygiene to the first through second and third grade students. And so after that, they send parent permission slips home, and when they return on the day of their visit, the students come down. They're called down to the temporary dental office. This may be in a gym, in a classroom, in a library, in my experience, even a hallway. And so the students are then screened first by the dentist, and then the registered dental hygienist and dental assistants apply the sealants and fluoride. They give them a toothbrush, a sticker, and they send them on back to class, all ready to go. The screenings provided by the licensed dentist provide the SMILES staff the opportunity to refer children with severe decay to the DHA clinic. And so if they have a really a big issue, they can see them at their clinic to get that next further service. There they are treated at no cost to the patient back at the clinic. Each school year, the SMILES program provides these services to over 9,000 AISD students at a value that ranges from $250,000 to $500,000 annually based on available support. And so truly, with their continued commitment to supporting Arlington ISD, Dental Health Arlington is a very deserving member of our community to receive the Community Engaged for Excellence Award of Appreciation. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Nancy Blinn, the Executive Director of Dental Health Arlington.
Well, good evening, Dr. Cavazos, President Mays, and the rest of the board. I really appreciate you guys honoring us tonight. I would like to recognize who I have with me this evening. I have our current board chair, Dr. Shad Hadway. You guys stand up or you can wave your hands, either one. I've got Sasha and Genesis, who were our dental assistants in the past program. I also have Gloria with us, who's a former board member. Sally Hopper, many of you know in the community, she was with us for many, many years and helped get this program up and running from the get-go. But the person I really want to introduce is Glenda Bell, and I'm really going to let Glenda speak to it because Glenda has been with us for 15 years. She is the SMILES director. Glenda, I'm going to let you come up and say your thank yous, and I appreciate you guys being here tonight, and thank you again for honoring us.
Thank you, guys. I'll keep it super short because I'm super shy and don't do well in front of people. But I do want to say that we are very honored to be recognized by AISD of recognizing the impact that we have on these first, second, and third graders. We see over 10,000 of them a year, and it's very impactful. I don't know if you know this, but there's a statistic out there that 51 million school hours are lost each year due to dental disease. So thanks to you guys, we're trying to lower that number. And thank you guys for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and yes, y'all can stand there. We're going to come down and take pictures with you. But I just want to say on behalf of my colleagues up here, thank y'all very much for what you're doing in our classrooms. I think we all understand that for a student to have anything going on in their mouth that is painful, they're not hearing anything the teacher's saying, they're miserable, they're not comfortable, and then they end up missing school. So thank you. Plus, I've got to think that maybe it's not quite as intimidating walking into your gym to have someone look in your mouth as it is having to go into the dentist office. So thanks for coming to us. We really appreciate what y'all have done. Dr. Cavazos and I are going to come down and take pictures, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
We are presenting an award that says Community Engaged for Excellence Award of Appreciation, presented to Dental Health Arlington Smiles Program. Can you see Shad?
Yes. Actually, being bullied.
You know where to send it, right? You have my email. Yes.
Okay, next on our agenda is the introduction of Assistant Principal for Cookin Educational Center, Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mays. And due to a scheduling conflict, the new assistant principal for Cookin could not be here October 17th, so we have invited her to this evening's board meeting. So it's my pleasure to introduce the new assistant principal for Cookin Education Center, Ms. Laura Turner Crump. Laura attended Drake University for elementary education, Bachelor of Science, University of Nevada for Master of Education in Ed Leadership. Most recently, a consultant with professional development for pre-kinder teachers and early literacy best practices. Has also worked as a senior field trainer for the Van Gogh Center, Reading and Language Arts. Has been a literacy specialist in Arlington ISD. Has also been a literacy coach in Fort Worth, Texas Reading First coach in Williams Elementary. Clark County School District, a second grade teacher, a literacy coach in Breakthrough to Literacy. There's a theme here. And has also taught pre-K, kinder, first, and second grade. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. President Mays, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, thank you for the opportunity to serve some of the youngest students here in Arlington ISD at Cookin Education Center and the community-based pre-K. The staff has already joyfully welcomed me on board, with open arms. And Dr. Spence and Jessica Hoover have shown grace and patience as I've just pedaled hard and fast in trying to fulfill my new position. And I want to say I am particularly honored to work with Dr. Spence, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And I just can't wait to learn volumes from her from day to day. I long have had a passion for early childhood education, simply because there is no denying the positive effect that a quality program and a quality start can have for each and every child in their entire educational journey. And understanding that, really understanding that, I'm humbled to serve and I am prepared to work. I've worked with leaders who have pushed me and encouraged me through the years. They recognize leadership qualities in me, and they spoke to me of their confidence in my ability. And I heard their voice in my head as I pushed submit that day on the computer. And I heard their voice in my head as I walked into each level of the interview process as well. My family has also been a consistent support. My mother is a retired educator, so she's a great sounding board and has always shown me support in my pursuits in education. My father would love to sit and talk to you about the accomplishments of his youngest child. So he has great pride as well. And with me this evening is my husband, Ryan, who has unwavering confidence in me. And I simply could not take this step without him as my partner. I clearly also brought my children with me tonight. This is Morgan and Matthew. They are 3.5 and 5, which are the ages of the children at Cookin. I am truly entrenched in early childhood education from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. And I would not have that any other way. So again, thank you for the opportunity to serve Arlington. Thank you.
He was. Okay, so as our custom, our appointees, please follow Mr. Kell. We will come out and greet you and welcome you. And we ask that everyone please allow the board to go first so we can come back and do our business. And y'all can continue to fellowship out in the lobby. I now call this meeting back to order. Now we've come to the part of our agenda for our open forum and agenda items. I see we do have a card. So this is a routine part of the school board's agenda for regularly scheduled meetings. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Ms. Benjamin. So next, we have no public hearings, so we will move on. The next thing on our agenda is action item, Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mays. This evening, we'd like to bring forward for your consideration, the 1920 Campus Performance Objectives and the District Scorecard. And I'll just preface this with, this is our continuing conversation with the implementation of House Bill 3 and the things that are required with that. You've heard a lot of information, several board meetings from Dr. Wirtz about the planning process and the ways that HB 3 is requiring some things. Tonight, you'll hear about our campus performance objectives and district scorecards so that work will continue. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Wirtz.
Good evening, President Mays, Dr. Cavazos, members of the board. The campus improvement planning process and the district scorecard are related to our district improvement planning process in a couple of ways. One, the district scorecard serves as a way to elevate some of the big rocks that are being targeted or worked towards in terms of overarching goals that are impacted by the work we're doing in the district improvement plan. And the campus improvement plans are plans that are articulated and executed at each of the individual sites that are intended to be directly aligned to the big goals that we have here at the district level. Tonight, we're going to break this presentation up into two different ways. First, Dr. Barlow will share with you the actual district scorecard, which will articulate those overarching large goals we're trying to achieve through our work in the district improvement plan. And in his presentation, he will share with you the relationship of the district scorecard to our model for continuous improvement. And then following Dr. Barlow, Dr. Brown will share with you some examples of some of the performance objectives that each of the campuses are working on at their schools at each of the levels. And in preparation of that presentation, I believe each of you also received access to those plans so you can look at them online in detail. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Barlow.
Good evening, President Mays, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. So you can see the scorecard or the presentation on the screen. So there's just a couple of slides here. I'm going to go through a little bit more detail maybe than I usually do since there's only a few slides, but I want to point out a couple of pieces there. So on the first slide, we have just the scorecard as presented. And just to give you a little bit of information on a couple of the cells there, is that we've changed a little bit the headers, and that'll align a little bit better to that continuous improvement model that Dr. Wirtz just mentioned, and I think that he also did or included that in his presentation maybe a couple of weeks ago. So I'll show kind of how that alignment is. So you notice that the headers there are student outcomes, experiences, and efficiencies. And so as we have kind of talked about what's the model that we want to use for continuous improvement, and how do we have measures that actually would have some sort of meaning as far as our overall system, our overall district. Those are kind of the areas that we've landed on right now. Of course, this is still kind of a work in progress, and so that may be modified a little bit. So maybe just a little bit of the correlation between those is that those student outcomes, obviously that's anything that has to do with students as they leave our system. That's really our primary focus within our school district as far as working with students and whether they're achieving on some sort of test or achieving with graduation rates or whatever that might be, some sort of achievement scores or some sort of achievement in general. Could be fine arts, could be anything. But then the experiences that they have along the way, we certainly want them to feel safe, we want them to be happy, we want them to feel satisfied with their teachers, their classrooms, that type of thing. And then certainly with any model, we want to make sure that we have some sort of efficiencies along the way. We know that resources are typically limited, especially in education, so we want to make sure that we have some sort of efficiencies that is built into that. So now going into just a couple of the details on, I'll start on the left side there on the student outcomes. That first one there, the district will perform at the 75th percentile amongst its peers using that plus or minus 10% low SES model on the state accountability system while maintaining a B. So we're somewhat familiar with that. We use that model several times with respect to maybe some comparison data. It's not really a good comparison to compare us across the state. Our demographics are different. So the key indicator that we use there is our low SES students, a percentage of them. We add 10% to that, subtract 10% from that, and it gives us a group of schools of about 400 districts to compare ourselves to. So the idea there is that we want to perform as well or better than 75% of those schools. That puts us in the top quartile. That's a pretty nice goal to have as far as saying that we're performing in the top quartile amongst like districts. So the next one there is all campuses will receive a MET standard rating on state accountability. So you know, as that we've changed that A to F over the last couple of years, those campuses that have an F rating are considered not meeting standard. So we want to make sure that we have no Fs and that everybody is meeting standard. And then that last one, we wanted to have on that column that is, we wanted to have something there that not only addressed our F campuses, but also our D campuses. So we have, after our appeal and going through all of the different mechanics of that, we have 14 campuses currently that are D campuses. And so the idea there is that at least 90% of those would have some sort of numeric increase in their score. You know, the rating for a D campus would be a 60 to a 69, C campus 70 to a 79, and so forth. So what we'd want to see there is that any of those D campuses would have at least some sort of increase in their numeric rating. Hopefully up to a C, but at least an increase in their numeric rating. Then moving over to the experiences there, so I think you've seen several presentations just on these general topics. The social emotional learning program with respect to students and the emphasis on social emotional learning. So basically right now we're in the implementation stage. We're really excited about working with some of the instruments that are aligned to the Castle model of that, which I think was presented here a couple of months ago. So we want to actually understand how students are understanding their social emotional learning now, and then maybe take a measure in a year, maybe take another measure in a year after that to kind of see what impact that we're having on that. Implement a multidisciplinary threat assessment team to create a framework for assessing threats made by students. Won't read the rest of that, but basically I think that presentation was a couple of weeks ago as well, as far as that new program that's in the district, looking at those threats, mitigating those, providing resources and so forth. The next one down is develop process measures of coaching and badging as they relate to the fidelity of the active learning cycle. We've seen this over the last several years as far as the active learning cycle that's been kind of in the works and implementation for the last several years, but we want to understand better that badging and coaching process and what are those measures that are happening in the classroom to improve those best practices. And then the last one on that column, develop process measures for monitoring implementation of balanced literacy. Again, another program that we've seen over the last couple of months with respect to reading, balanced literacy. We feel like that is extremely important right now. We want to make sure that we're understanding that better so that we can provide assistance when necessary, and then also see the impact of those programs. The right column there, won't go into a whole lot of detail. A lot of that is somewhat similar to what we had last year. Probably the big key difference is at the very bottom there where it says implement phase 1 of the 2019 bond program. We kind of saved that till the last minute, till after Tuesday, that once that came through, well then felt like that was a necessary component to add to those efficiencies. So then the last part I'll do is I just want to do a quick relationship between kind of where those sit with respect to that continuous improvement model. So I'm going to focus on about 3 areas here. You'll see those on the screen, and how those relate to the continuous improvement model that you've seen before. I'm going to kind of flip back and forth between these 2 slides. And so this is the continuous improvement model that we looked at. What we're really trying to understand is that right side, those big bubbles on the right side, we have those experiences, outcomes, and efficiencies. Again, that's the headers of the scorecard now. We've seen this model a couple of times over the last several months with respect to these are things that we want, kind of these overarching measures of our school district in our system. And so inside of the box are all little processes that actually affect those measures. So there's a lot of processes that happen in school or an education environment that may or may not be a final outcome, but we believe there's some sort of correlation to those final outcome or outcome measures. You can see, I'm just going to kind of flip back and forth here. So the green, I'll start on the left side there, that purple box there talks about met standards, so that would be some sort of outcome measures, and you can see that is related to outcome measures for our students. And then if you look under the experiences, you'll see that first column there about SEL, social emotional learning, that would be related to our experiences, and you can see that circled on the model. And then last piece there under efficiencies, we have that proposed budget, general fund budgets, and you can see how that is related to those efficiencies on the model. Notice also within the box, then you have some more granular processes. And so we would see like the SEL instruction that's inside the box related to those outcomes or those SEL measures that we'll be surveying students on. The active learning cycle and the balanced literacy would obviously be connected or correlated to student outcomes and the successes that we're having with our students in meeting standards. And then you have that budget adoption related to those efficiencies, the efficiency piece there. So that's kind of how the scorecard now would be kind of correlated to that model and looking at processes and how they're correlated to the outcomes. If you have any questions, be happy to answer those, or if we want to wait until the end of the full presentation, how we want to do that. Okay, absolutely.
All right, good evening, President Mays, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. So just to connect the two presentations and thinking about what Kevin has presented as it relates to our inputs and the experiences we want our students to have, and of course, looking at the outcome measures in terms of our performance for our schools, our SEL work. What we're going to talk about now is our campus improvement plans and how we were able to make sure we're leveraging our district's priorities in our campus improvement planning process. So one thing about growth is we know that's important when you're talking about continuous improvement is that if you are not continually growing and making progress, then you will not be successful or have the achievement that we know that we all long for. And that's a quote by Benjamin Franklin. So Dr. Barlow talked about the performance objectives, the importance of those, talked about the district scorecard and how we're going to measure our performance. And then, of course, all of this is aligned to our district improvement plan. So we'll be able to monitor and track those throughout the year to make sure we're on track to meet our goals. So in alignment to strategic plan and district improvement plan goals, we have 4 areas we're really focusing on. One, of course, as we know, is academic achievement, our college readiness, our workforce readiness, and then, of course, leadership, citizenship, and responsibility. So all of the plans that you've had an opportunity to review or that we'll share with you today are all connected to these priorities that are aligned to our strategic plan. So this campus planning process, first we just kind of walk you through how that looks for the campus and how they're supported through that process. The first part is Kevin and his team. They do a great job of training all of our principals and campus leaders in continuous improvement to know specifically how to identify the right levers to move the schools and provide optional workshops and sessions as they're engaged in the planning process in case they have more questions. That staff is ready and available to make sure they are able to support them. They also get feedback, follow-up from the area superintendents that work specifically with the campus principal and teams to make sure, again, they're focusing on the right levers, and if they have any questions or concerns or need some additional support, they are right there alongside them through the process. And then principals conducted a comprehensive needs assessment. And through that needs assessment, they were able to examine all the data from the previous year, determine what are the priorities for the campus, and engage in a root cause analysis. And with that root cause analysis, they're able to identify what the problem is and then drill down specifically to determine what is the root cause of that issue. And let's make sure that we're addressing the right component in our improvement plan. And then we involved the site-based decision-making team. So each campus then had an opportunity to sit down with their SBDMs to collaborate with them to make sure that the plans are aligned with the board district improvement plan performance objectives. The alignment is just so very important to the work that district and campus are one and connected in their work. And then, of course, the board will approve the proposed CIP performance objectives. Then we'll go through them again. So you know that you have pretty much a good draft of our CIPs. We know that's going to be a fluid document, which means we'll make tweaks and adjustments as we go, as we move out throughout the year. If we need to make any mid-course corrections, et cetera, then they have the ability to do that. So area soups will be able to continue to provide them feedback individually as they continue implementing their campus improvement plan. And then our CIPs will be finalized and published. You all have access to them now, but just to say that we still have a little bit of work to do in tweaking some of those plans. So this is the first year that we've been using the Effective Schools framework to really connect our improvement plans. In the past, we've used critical success factors, and now our TEA has gone now to the Effective Schools framework, which really, we talked about earlier at an earlier meeting, really prioritizes levers that we want our teachers and principals to focus on. Lever 1 is around strong leadership and planning. So as you go to the plans, you're going to see which lever they're going to focus on and why that's a priority for the school. So once they identify that as a priority, it's because they've gone through a comprehensive needs assessment, that root cause analysis to determine that lever 1 is going to be a high priority for them. Lever 2 is well-supported teachers. 3 is creating a positive school culture, which we know is also aligned to our SEL work, which Dr. Barlow referenced earlier. Prioritize lever 4 is high quality curriculum, and prioritize lever 5 is effective instruction. So with each of these levers that are outlined by in the Effective Schools framework, there is a campus or a leadership responsibility in implementing, and there's also district commitments and responsibilities that we have to make sure we're supporting each of those levers for our campuses. So as our campus principals are engaging in the improvement planning process, they have quarterly updates. This gives them an opportunity to convene their leadership team, look at the strategies that they have outlined for their plan for the year, and determine if there need to be any mid-course corrections, any adjustments, and they have the opportunity to do that. So as they're looking at the quarterly update, they may decide, that strategy that we've outlined, we probably need to discontinue that one. That one's not giving us the bang for the buck. It's not really moving the needle the way we need it to, and so they can choose to discontinue that particular strategy. Sometimes they may just say, let's be honest, we've not really made progress on that strategy. Maybe we're hyper-focused on strategy 1 and strategy 2. We've not made the progress, and they're able to note that in Plan for Learning so we all have access to see how they're progressing. Sometimes they will determine that, we're going to continue the strategy. It's working pretty well. We may make a slight modification to it, but we feel like we're on the right track. And the last option is accomplished. If they feel like they have mastered that and they feel like they've executed it successfully, they will jot down that it's accomplished. And so as I show you a plan in a moment, you'll see how that looks in Plan for Learning, where principals and the senior team were able to go in and look to determine how those quarterly updates look for our campuses. So even though you have access to all of the plans, I just wanted to highlight a couple of them just to kind of show you a snippet of what those plans look like. They look simple on the page, but they went through a lot of work to be able to come up with the prioritized levers and strategies they want to employ for their campus. So the first one is South Davis Elementary School. And so South Davis has a brand new principal a new principal to South Davis this year. And so I just wanted to highlight one of the goals that she has for her campus and some of the work they're engaging in. And you have this, looks a little bit better probably in your packet than it does here on the screen. But for goal 1, she really wants to focus on the team focusing on making sure they're increasing student performance in the approaches, meets, and the master's category. And they really want to focus on reading with this particular goal. That's an identified area of opportunity for them. And so if you look at some of the strategy description, it outlines which lever they want to focus on, which I shared with you earlier. So lever 1 is strong school leadership and planning. You're going to see this being a common thread throughout our presentations today, as well as when we get to our targeted improvement plans, this being an area we really want to strengthen so we can make sure we have effective planning on the outset so that the execution of the lesson is going to be a little bit better. So then you have the elements there in the next column, which really just references our Title I responsibilities for the elements. Who's going to monitor this strategy? So you see ILT, which is instructional leadership team, the principal, the dean, instructional coach, teachers, identifies who's responsible for that. And then the strategy's expected result or target. So then there will be something numerical or quantifiable that we can be able to determine whether or not we're actually on target to meet that goal. And so it outlines some of those expected results there. And then on the right side is where you'll see the formative reviews. So I mentioned those quarterly checkpoints. So you'll see in November, this is going to be the month that they actually will go in and kind of assess where they think they are in the next couple of weeks. And for South Davis, they've already jotted down, they're on track right now. They're on track with that particular standard, but they have not quite mastered it yet, which we expect that to be, of course, a part of the process throughout the entire year. The second part of that, they're focusing on lever 2, which is effective, well-supported teachers, high-quality curriculum, and effective instruction. And so again, what does that look like at South Davis this year? What's the priority? Making sure the teachers are engaging in PLC planning. They develop an academic calendar to really be able to monitor and track the objectives that they're teaching to the students as well. And then, of course, they expect that all of their teachers will utilize that 6 weeks calendar and align their lesson plans. We know that we have robust curriculum documents available for our teachers, and just making sure that we're utilizing those in our planning as well. And the third part there is really just around high quality curriculum. Again, I just referenced that, making sure that we're utilizing the great materials and resources that we have. The second one is Gunn Junior High School. And so for Gunn, I'll just kind of highlight one of their areas of opportunity they're really focusing on is really TELPAS growth target. So we know that it's important for our English learners to make significant progress, at least a year's progress, in speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And so they've identified this as an area of opportunity. You can see that Gunn has, of course, lots of distinctions. It doesn't mean that we don't have room to grow. So they were able to identify one specific population and make sure they were targeting their support to that population. So their focus on English learners, they have 71 students out of the 176 So it shows you they're drilled down in that data to find out the root cause. And they really want to focus on those students making at least a year's progress in speaking and listening. And so some ways they want to make sure they're able to do that is that the teachers are practicing oral language to strengthen their strategies or reading and writing strategies as well, making sure they're focusing on collaboration, communication, and if they're engaging in those kinds of behaviors in a classroom, kids have more opportunity to speak and listen and read and write as well. And the last one I want to share with you is Barnett Junior High, and their focus really is around SEL. As you know, that's one of our district improvement priorities as well. And so they really highlighted those performance objectives aligned to specific questions that they want to see a shift and an improvement in questions. For example, they want an increase in the percentage of students who agree that school staff listens to what we have to say. They would have a specific quantifiable number they want that to move to. With the next question, the percentage of Barnett students reporting that they agree or strongly agree that I sometimes stay home because I don't feel safe at school is going to decrease. So we have specific measures there. So ultimately, with this particular strategy, we're looking at making sure that students feel safe at school. They feel like they're in an environment where teachers and staff members and students care about them. They will engage in the SEL practices that we learned about in a couple of board meetings ago, and really make sure they're targeting PD for teachers to know what those strategies look like, and that kids feel like they're connecting with their teachers in a more meaningful way. And so I just wanted to highlight 3 different types of plans that were submitted, and of course you have access to all of them, as I mentioned as well. So I will take questions. Our recommendation, of course, is that you approve the Campus Improvement Plan's performance objectives and the district scorecard. And before that, we will take questions from you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Thank you, Dr. Barlow. We may have some questions, Dr. Barlow, for you as well, so thank you for staying close to the front. Do any of my colleagues have questions? Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Mays. Thank you both. Great information. As I say, I think I'm starting to sound like a broken record up here with the intelligent approach. Thank you for that. I do appreciate it. It's such a long span from where we began a decade ago. So thank you. I really appreciate the information just with the snapshot, what the different campuses are doing. I think it's great. I don't really have any questions about that. So I do have a question for Dr. Barlow, but you might be able to answer as well. It's about the scorecard though, so since he presented on it, I thought I'd ask.
Yes, sir.
So a couple of questions. One is, when coming to measure on that first column, the at least 90% of the D campuses, so that comes to 12.6 campuses. Would it be better to just say a certain number of campuses, or what was your rationale there with a percent versus a number of campuses?
I don't know that we had a rationale on the percent versus the number of campuses. We can certainly change it if we need to. We kind of went back and forth, but we kind of landed on 90. So,
yeah, I think either way works, and it may be clearer to just say how many campuses.
Yeah. We
We wanted to set a high standard for the improvement, the numerical improvement of the schools. We also know that there are different levels, and some of those numerical improvements are, takes a lot more.
Sure.
And so we want to be mindful of that, but we wanted to stick to a high standard, but the number versus the percent is clear as well.
Yeah.
so we can put the number of campuses in there if that's
Okay.
better.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have a feeling 12 or 13. I mean, that's obviously where if you do 90, you're rounding up to 13, but 12, it's still a high standard. So
Sure.
I don't necessarily have a specific recommendation, but in order to approve it, we probably have to have that specific campus number. So.
Yeah, and I would say our thinking with setting the standard was probably more at 12.
Okay.
In terms of that level, because we also debated all of them, but there was a healthy debate. Dr. Barlow wins sometimes. So yeah, no, it's a healthy debate. It's our first kind of look at from that view.
Yeah.
If you notice, all those components are connected in
Yep.
one way.
Yep.
That one is connected because that D campus movement must happen also.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
just a longer kind of runway for that, but that movement must happen. And so we talked about that when scores came out and things
Yeah.
like that.
Very good. I have a couple other questions related to all campuses will have met the standard rating. I believe each individual campus is going to, of course, target improvement, but as far as the district scorecard, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to numbers of distinctions at certain campuses. So what was the thought process in that and not having it in the district scorecard? I'm thinking that's still a process that's occurring, but I was just curious.
As far as the distinctions?
Yeah, just, for trending, so that campuses can continue to improve. If they didn't get any, they can aspire for one or two. For those that made them all, they want to stay, maintain. And with this scorecard, we wouldn't be able to see as a board that, well, we had all these that hit them all last year, or this year they didn't, but we still met the standard.
Sure.
So,
We didn't really have any discussion on that. We were really kind of focused on those campuses, getting them out of that non-met standard or
Okay.
that needs improvement.
okay.
Certainly, that could be something of consideration.
Yeah, and the way that part of that was processed was making sure all campuses, so they all connect, right? So making sure all campuses meet the standard. And we're close with even Barry's appeal and things like that, so we're close this year. But we know that that's an important standard across the board because of not only the implications, but a whole slew of things, right? So that's a high standard in all campuses meeting the expectation. When we get into, which is why we were very careful with the last bullet there, when we get into last year versus this year, he's already smiling.
We had a long discussion.
There's a lot of ebb and flow, and so if you're not careful, you're making improvements, but it's ebbing and flowing, and it's not really represented well. So I'll give you a good example with the D's campuses. We started off with reducing the number of D campuses. But what you get into there, if the F campus becomes a D, then you've increased the number of D campuses in a positive way because you want the F campuses to be higher. So we focused on just the current D campuses, making sure that they make improvement because we know that that is also a long runway. So we're trying to cover it all with those three bullets. So everybody meeting standard means nobody gets an F. D movement, because we know that that's important, happens for, in this case, 12 out of 14 campuses. And then the 75th percentile is the overarching, and that's why we were clear about it's a stretch goal, because it is a stretch goal. It's an overarching goal of comparative data. So the second bullet and the third bullet are more internal, about not having as many Ds, all campuses meeting standard. The first bullet is the comparative overall. And we talked about when the scores were released that that is a high standard among comparison groups. And if you notice, it's plus or minus a 10% SES, which still gives a lot of margin. That's a healthy margin of difference in terms of number of SES. And then trying to hit that 75th percentile, which is a stretch goal, but it's an important one. So this one, that student outcome, is all connected in a way that not only makes movement and improvement, or that's the goal, but also sets a high comparative standard, which we're already, pleased to be in getting close to the 75th percentile, but even making that movement is a stretch goal.
Yeah.
That's how those are connected.
Okay, very good. Yeah, is there any indicator that the needle, or I guess the line is going to move from TEA and changing things? With your crystal ball, is there any indication?
What we heard yesterday at TSA, we had Jamie Crow speak to us, he pretty much runs the accountability piece there, and pretty much everything's staying the same with respect to with respect to the cutoff points and how you do all the measurements and so forth. Probably the one that was of most interest was the way they actually identify the students in the CCMR with respect to military. So we just want to be kind of aware that that part is changing a little bit, and that the previous way that we identified students with respect to were they interested in the military or had an interest in enlisting was very, very loose with respect to the districts. We called many districts called TEA. We got no guidance on that. Said basically come up with a system, and so we've got our own system on how we do that and so forth, because we have no access to the DoD records, the Department of Defense records. But what we heard yesterday is that they will actually compare students as military enlistment or interest in military to DoD records, possibly even as early as the spring. And so if they weren't on those DoD records, those students could possibly come out. So if you're talking about big changes, that's probably the biggest one. We don't know how that's actually going to operate in the spring. He really kind of surprised us with that comment yesterday, because I just didn't think they've kind of been talking about that, but I just really didn't think they'd be able to get that in place that fast, because the last time we've had that conversation with them was that the DoD wouldn't release that information, period, because of national security. So I'm not sure what has changed since then. But if anything's going to change, it's probably going to be, or anything big is going to change, it's probably going to be that one.
And I'll just add that is significant, because it's a significant part of CCMR.
Yes.
And CCMR is a significant part of accountability.
Yes.
A large percentage, would you say 40% for high schools approximately of their accountability? And that is a big change. And it's, again, back to that, they launch an accountability system, and then it tweaks and tweaks and tweaks, and it has major implications for school districts. And this is one of those examples. At first, it's like, nobody can get that data, so this is how we're going to implement the system in terms of the military.
Yes.
And then as time went on, not a lot of time, making a lot of movement that we're not really aware of, how they're solving that, where that's going to really affect our ability to even understand the data that they're capturing, which leads to another, nebulous source that is very significant for high schools and then for the district as well. So that's the big one.
Yeah.
And again, maybe just to put it a little bit more perspective on that, is that that process would happen in the spring as we get ready for accountability in the summertime. But the students that we're talking about are students who graduated last May. So those students are not even in the system this year.
Right.
So going into the school year, we were still under the understanding that develop your own system, which we've done. We have a pretty hardy system with respect to identifying students that have expressed an interest. We get halfway through the year. Now they're telling us that in the spring, they may compare those to DoD records of students who were graduates last May, who that rule wasn't even in effect then.
Right. Right.
Very frustrating.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, obviously, through the Alliance and other districts, that became very well known. Again, opportunity to say thank you to both of you for your advocacy in that role of this past session and working with the commissioner, et cetera. Definitely is helpful. So for what will the individual campuses, what will they have to internally as far as a process to aspire to get all distinctions as an example, or to maintain if they had them all? What mechanism is in place for their individual continuous improvement?
We actually, a while back, we started running some models on how to help campuses understand better how to reach those goals. And so very similar to what we have on the data wall, where we look at data and where they kind of stand, and then we give some projections. We have this model that we've run over the last several months called the least path to the next level. So how do you actually get to if you're at a B, how do you get to an A? If you're at a C, how do you get to B, and so forth? We started some of those models and distinctions a while back, and now that we're having that conversation again, we've actually started more conversations with campuses on using those models. And so there's a whole list of, without going into all details, there's a whole list of indicators that go into distinctions and each one of them, and they kind of group together and so forth. But we can go in and we can say, oh, well, you need to have this many students at the Met Standard on third grade reading, So we can do some calculations there. We can tell campuses how close they are, whether 2 students away, 5 students away, that type of thing. So we're starting to implement that model with campuses as the focus has been more on those distinctions and kind of moving into those areas. That's been some conversation with campuses.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I was just curious because it would be, if there's no accountability, no incentive, then they can really move a lot and still
Sure.
meet standards. So not saying that would happen in the district, just from our end, we should have those kind of processes in place. Very good. What are we doing also related to previous scorecards? I think we had, I don't have one with me, an example of the increasing the number of students taking the AP exams. We were looking at the next progression of that as the level of success for those that are taking the AP exams. How is that still within the accountability framework within the district, saying it's not here on the scorecard?
So that'll still factor into those CCMR credits.
Okay.
Because as students pass various exams, whether AP, SAT, ACT, then they get credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would still be reflected in the scorecard. It's just a little bit further down. It's not like explicitly on there, but yes, that would still be reflected.
Okay. And we'll still have our internal benchmarks and targets to try to increase that number of AP kids and AP passing rates and still be able to analyze that to the individual campuses. Oh, yes, Dr. Wertz has something to add.
So if you'll recall in the last meeting, I talked specifically about House Bill 3 plans, reading, literacy, mathematics, and then CCMR. The CCMR plan will articulate specific goal targets for each of the student groups, for each of the indicators, for 5 consecutive years. So when I share that with you in the spring, you'll get a sense of like not only what those targets are, but what actions we've been putting in place to measure our progress towards those areas.
Gotcha. Okay, very good.
Yeah, and so thank you for that, Stephen. A lot of this work is to align even with HB3.
Sure.
And we know this because we've been in the systems. Too many different priorities is really difficult for campuses. And what's coming in the spring, it's not here yet, but it's coming, is a whole new system of goal setting for CCMR that goes all the way to the board level, and a whole new system of goal setting for reading and literacy that comes to the board level. And so the best effort possible to align those so that the focus stays where it's supposed to, which is student achievement.
Yep, yep.
And that's what you're seeing here to a large extent. HB3 implementation is coming, and it'll get much more micro, I think.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's excellent. I appreciate all the information. It makes great sense. I have just a couple of questions related on the experiences targets. Some of these, to me, they're already done versus a target, and maybe the meaning versus the actual words are a little bit different. So implement a multidisciplinary threat assessment team. That I was under the impression that the team is there, but it's then matriculating to the next step of the evolution of that process?
That's correct. So I would say implementation has begun, and it's not fully implemented because we're still working out the processes of reporting and the processes of ensuring fidelity with that system and things like that. It is in its beginning stages. It's very, very far ahead, but it is something that this year is a big year for implementation.
Okay.
Calibration among campuses, among reporting standards, among response and intervention. There's just not enough data there yet to understand the effectiveness of that.
Okay.
And probably the most kind of critical part of that is sustainability. And sustainability as the volume ebbs and flows as well. And so
Right.
that's a big part of implementation.
So that would probably be the same then I basically had that same type of question with the developing process measures for coaching and badging. Did a great presentation on digital badges and that type of thing. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, the process is already there, but it's not. So I'm just looking at the wording. In my mind, we had this presentation, it's great, things are moving. I know
No.
it's at the beginning,
Yeah.
but this is like, yep, check, we developed the process, but we're still,
Okay, so this specifically is referring to processes to measure the fidelity of implementation of the learning framework at the schools. So right now, we have 26 schools that are currently implementing the active learning cycle, and each of those schools are in different stages of that implementation. Some are 3 years in and they're doing it across the entire school. Some it's their first year, they've been doing it for 2 months. And next year, we'll add another, I think, 19 schools. What this target is around is the development of measures that we'll use to monitor the progress of that implementation at each of the schools. So for example, we do have coaching systems that are being put in place. They're in the process of being put in place, and schools that have that are actively doing the active learning cycle, each of those teachers has a coach attached to them. So that's in place. What we haven't had in place that we're putting in place this year is how to set thresholds to understand when in fact we can gauge the quality of implementation that's happening at the school and across the district. So for example, in order for a teacher to earn a badge, there are growth indicators, several growth indicators that are connected to that badge, and when you reach all the growth indicators, you earn the badge. So what we're in the process of tracking through an online system is how many touch points teachers are individually getting, at what pace are they actually meeting their growth indicators, what is that resulting in badging, so that at the end of the year, we can do a statistical analysis to understand what the relationship is between the number of badging and coaching touch points and growth indicators that are actually occurring at a school and the relationship to the results kids are actually experiencing in the classroom.
right,
This will be the first year we've ever done that.
right,
Yeah,
okay.
So that's what this is.
That's what
We
that's
want
about.
to implement that, yeah.
Okay,
Pieces are kind of sitting there, we're now putting them all.
Put them all together, yeah.
Right.
And the,
Right.
probably the key word there is the fidelity,
Right.
yes.
because we've launched these things,
Mhm.
but we have to measure the fidelity of the implementation. As an example, that's the same with threat assessment. We've launched it.
Yeah.
Is it really yielding the results that we want? And is it being implemented across all systems with fidelity? And that's probably the better way to frame this.
And I would say the same, what I just described is true for the very last bullet around balanced literacy. It's being put in place, the training, now we have to monitor. That's
Very
what this
good.
is about, yeah.
That's great clarification. Yeah, and I would say also, moving to the efficiencies column, that's what I would see in that third bullet on effectively communicating the bond, the needs, implementation, projects. Somebody from the outside looking in would say, well, you already did that. But this is a 1920.
That's the point, right there.
Yes,
It's
and that's why I'm saying it, to put it
It's a
out there to
1920.
everybody to understand that that's a significant piece of 1920. I do have a recommendation on the wording of that, though, is to maybe stop it at to inform the community versus in the passage. Just, yes, we do want that, but from a district standpoint, that leads towards advocacy, and we should not do that as the district specifically. So. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Wonderful stuff. Again, the intelligent approach, I just can't say that enough. The design is top notch. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Mr. Wilbanks. Press it again. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Mays. My question is probably going to be for Tracy or Dr. Wertz. So going through the F-Campus improvement plans, I think in this presentation, in your mind, what were some of the common themes that were kind of, when they did the root cause analysis at each campus, kind of tended to show up over and over as a common theme across those campuses? For instance, I noticed a lot of them are going to be relying on the data-driven instruction, and seemed like there was still some uncomfortable, or maybe they haven't really absorbed that concept yet. Is that one of the themes, or what in your mind, what were they?
Yeah, good question. And we'll talk more specifically in the next presentation, but definitely data-driven instruction, being able to identify areas of opportunity for students and where they're struggling based on the instruction. and the assessment. So I think that's just a clear, making sure that we're clear on what that looks like, that cycle looks like. So as a district, the last couple of years, we've been really focusing on data-driven practices, where when there is an assessment given, that teachers are able to drill down in the data to identify where the specific area of opportunity is for the student, and then reteach to make sure they're able to get that. And so some campuses are a little further along than others, and our two campuses we'll talk about today both identify that as an area of opportunity. And the second one is lesson planning, which is kind of, we talked about the effective lesson planning as a part of this effective school factor. So just making sure that they're planning effective lessons, and when students are struggling, they identify where the opportunities are to reteach and being able to implement that with fidelity. So
Okay, I
those
didn't
are
mean
some
to
main
steal your
areas.
thunder from
It's okay.
this presentation, so
We'll go a little bit deeper.
yeah, maybe I'll save my questions unless we want to talk about the specific campus improvement plans. Maybe I'll save that one for after as well. So I'll yield the rest of my time to my colleague, Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbanks. Mr. Hogg.
I didn't know Mr. Wilbanks had time, so we know you're not limited. Thank you, President Mays. Dr. Cavazos, I'm glad you said it, because that you and Dr. Barlow were having that discussion, because my question is going to be, which ones are you not planning to increase?
Yeah, so that's the debate, because we want to also be mindful of the fact that that there is a lot. Well, let me start a different way. That this accountability system is not perfect, and it yields a lot of ebb and flow, and so and that's the reality. Whether that's just the reality of this accountability system. There's so many factors that can yield, but we know that they have to increase. And so what we wanted to make sure was leave some room for that ebb and flow, and we debated how much room. And so, if you went with half, it's probably too much room. We know the overarching is to make movement on all the D campuses, because that's a standard. You have to move that. But that's what led to the, what's a reasonable, what's a statistically significant amount, and we landed more on the science probably on that than on the art, because of the system being so vulnerable, I guess, to ebbs and flows. This is the best way I can describe it. I don't know if you want to add, Dr. Barlow, to that.
That was probably a discussion of more on my side as far as just, I'm always hesitant to say 100%. Just because the whole standard error measurement and all that sort of stuff. So I just, 100% of anything on any given day, that's just next to impossible. So the 90% seemed to be a reasonable percent, but certainly open to whatever discussion.
And I would just add, because I didn't say this part also, if there's a campus that's at a 70 and we know that the system is vulnerable to ebbs and flows, and they go into a 69, that's the other debate we had, was, is it the total number? Is it only this year's? And so the best frame in terms of a kind of a big frame view is to concentrate on what we know today, which is the Ds that have to make movement in numerical value. And then that's where the rest of them kind of connect, making sure they all meet standard, making sure we stay at the 70th or reach the 75th percentile means every campus has to make some movement. And so that's kind of the thinking.
I get it. It's hard. We've had this discussion on our overarching goal to say some are, and I appreciate the no Fs on there. Now, I may throw a little wrench in this, and it's just a change in mindset of thinking. As I talked with other boards, and I've looked into other boards, especially large urban ones around the country, I worry not all of our goals are 100% student outcomes. These other pieces that come in, the experiences and efficiencies, are all somewhat the how to get us to student outcomes. And so I saw that, and this is good work, and this is the way we've been doing this for a long time. But I started thinking of things as I started exploring, Portland Public Schools, Dallas ISD, Des Moines, some of the big ones that I've talked with and seen. We start looking at what are some of these goals of student outcomes, and I also worry that we're just on 1-year goals on these. Should we have a 5-year goal as our student outcome goal, and it's based, or a 3-year, yeah, 3, either way, it's fine, and then we're tracking towards getting to that goal, because now we're living on a live and die year by year process. And then you start thinking, I start thinking, what are these student outcome goals that I think are important to the entire district to be tracking on that? And, you know, it's things such as, you know, y'all have got one in there in social emotional learning, attendance rate. Let's be honest, that's a huge number. That may be a little bit more of a how. I could justify that. We start getting into equity. Do we need an overarching goal based on equity on there? I think it is a critical factor. Do we get into a goal for students of color, our students of low socioeconomic status, and getting into really high student outcome goals? And then also, I worry, we don't have, you know, we kind of got in the experiences, but should our student outcome, and I also really worry about STAR. Our goals are based on STAR, right? So what are our math and literacy goals that we could be tracking? Because let's be honest, math and literacy needs to be key critical goals. I see y'all laughing, and
So that's coming through HB3, and that's part of this big year of complication and transition, because there's going to be 5-year goals, and here's the with other districts and out of state as well. The issue is that the 3 goals on the student outcomes are so encompassing.
they are big.
I mean,
Agree.
it affects everything, every student in essence that's taking a test, right? But even if you're not, your CCMR, so it's every high school student is affected. And so in Texas, these kind of systems are built in. You have by ethnicity, you have by socioeconomic. So when you say we're going to do a heavy lift on system, every campus meeting standard, for example, there's a lot of movement that has to happen for that to happen by itself. The 75th percentile is big. It won't, you know, it's not absolute, but it's a big equity goal because it's related to socioeconomic students and the 10%. And if we're performing at that level with similar districts in terms of poverty, that's a big equity kind of lens. So that's how we frame this, is to try to connect the big pieces. The flip side of that is we had things like AP, coherent sequence of courses, and that becomes very narrow, and you're not impacting, you're impacting number of students, but it's not a big system that you're impacting. And this is more of a system view. What you would expect at the campuses are to have those very specific things that you mentioned. The process part, that's another really important piece. Those things have to work well for the outcomes to actually happen, and that's kind of our continuous
So with that, because I
thinking.
agree, I
Yeah.
think the developed process measures for implementation of balanced literacy, but couldn't we turn that into a student outcome goal, and that's a how of how to get to that student outcome?
Well, I think if you were to get to the how, you would be in the weeds of the strategies of an individual plan. Which
Agree
is part of the
100%. That's
PIP.
why I say on the scorecard from a district, you have an outcome, and then you guys get into the how.
So that is coming in the spring when we present to you the plans for reading, math, and literacy. Literacy, math, and CCMRs. There will be 5-year goals, a 5-year goal with breakdown by what's the pace at each individual year by student subgroup. So for example, to your comment around equity and students of color or economically disadvantaged students, each student across all the demographics that we track at the state level will have a goal and target that reaches towards growth, towards a 5-year target that's established for each of those, and that will be in reading, math, and around the indicators around CCMR. So I think what you're saying, that will be provided in the spring. The other point I was gonna just mention is, I think when we think about our learners and the goals and targets we have around them, in terms of outcomes, we look at more, to your point you made, than we're looking at more than just like a STAR exam or how well they read. The reason why we survey them, or we intentionally survey them every year and ask them about their experiences and social emotional learning, is because there is an outcome in terms of educating the whole child besides just the academic acquisition that they go through over the course of their lifetime with us. And so part of the SEL goal, for example, that you'll notice on the scorecard is intended to articulate an effort to also measure as an outcome the quality of experience that the learners are having from that perspective of their education outside of just learning to read and write, but also acquiring those skills that they're going to need in order to be successful in an environment beyond the classroom.
So Dr. Wirtz, with that and on the experiences, I guess I just get worried when we have more experiences and efficiencies than we do student outcomes in our goal. And I know those 3 student outcomes we have are huge.
Right, yeah, so
huge.
the
Hold on a second, Dr.
Yeah.
Passos. And so with that on experiences, are we expecting just to implement a measure, but we don't know what that measurement's going to be yet? Is that?
It's a baseline.
Okay, so
There
it'll
is
be our
no
first
measure,
year baseline.
and most districts don't have a measure.
Right.
of-
I mean, it's new. Everyone
Right.
across the country is kind of new, dipping into the social. Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, that's fine. That's all. I know I'm throwing a little
No, it's
wrench
good.
and throwing this. I want to make sure we're really always. We all talk about as a board. What are we focused on student outcomes? Student outcomes. And I look and I get a little worried when I see more goals based on other things than student outcomes on that prospect.
Last piece on the every campus meeting standard, just as a context, which everybody's fully aware of, the system implications for not achieving that, as you've seen across the state, whether we agree or not agree with that, are heavy and unreasonable, if you ask me, in my opinion, and I'll just share my opinion. It is completely unreasonable. However, it is a big system implication for the district for not meeting a standard over a period of years, just to Met standard.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Ms. Walton?
Well, thank you, President Mays. Y'all may want to reel me in, but I'm going there anyway. We're talking about student outcomes, and all I can think of sitting here is we can have the best laid plans and the best data, and unless we've got an experienced teacher with those kids and implementing whatever it is that we arrive at, we're done. And so, can we give any thought or any planning to how do we retain our experienced teachers who know how to write lesson plans already, who know how to form relationships with children, who understand pacing and all of those things that are just impossible for most first-year teachers to really understand. So, yeah, we have not as much turnover as some districts do, but it just seems to me that one way maybe to give us a little bit of an edge on this is to somehow figure out how to retain our experienced teachers who can deliver. And I think it's got to be something about these teachers that we have feeling supported, feeling encouraged, feeling appreciated. And I just think we need to maybe somehow look at that element too. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. So this is an action item. So is there a motion to accept? Absolutely. Mr. Hogg?
Lots of discussion tonight. Dr. Passos, does it put y'all behind if we don't fully accept this and let staff kind of evaluate and also maybe, can I vote on it? Yes. There's a side of me that's saying there's a lot of words discussed tonight to make sure we're hitting these right goals in the process.
So I would, from my perspective, the scorecard can wait. The campus performance objectives would need to go because we're in November And remember, and the other side of the scorecard, it can wait in essence, but it is this school year scorecard. And we're gonna be close to December before we adopt it. And in all fairness, that's just a semester.
And with that, Dr. Rostos, I think you're right, and we can always come, I think the campus improvements are the getting into the house and how we're doing that and reading through those. I think we're hitting the right paces on those. As Dr. Wirt said, we're starting to track all, I think we're hitting the right pieces on that. If we do, I don't ever usually like to go back. If we wanted to go back to the next month and make a tweak on the scorecard, we could make that kind of tweak and change. So with that, Ms. Mays, I'm willing to make a motion to approve as recommended by district.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Hogg, a second by Ms. Fowler.
Let me ask one clarification on that. Dr. Rice, you'd made one recommendation on the verbiage on efficiencies.
Yeah, that's actually why I hit my light for discussion, so that on column 1, that we changed it from the 90% to 12 campuses. There will be an increase for 12 campuses for that rewording, and then to cut off the and passage part on the efficiencies on the third bullet.
So are those recommendations that would then be accepted?
Absolutely.
So that we're
Yep,
voting
makes
on the
sense.
right?
I'm willing to make my motion to include Dr. Rice's changes. Thank you, Ms. Fowler.
Thank you. Once again, Mr. Hogg making the motion, Ms. Fowler second, with the changes noted by Dr. Reich. Please vote. Okay, all present, vote yes. Okay, so next on the agenda is action item to consider our target improvement plans. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mays. And this is, like I mentioned earlier, the continuation of the same discussion. And it's going to last because we'll be back with more HB3 implementation. This is specific to target improvement plans. And this is where there's been a lot of different, expansion of requirements by the agency and changes in requirements. And this is where the D campuses come into play. And so there's a lot of expansion of requirements. That's probably the best way I can say it. And so just kind of not shifting completely gears, but a little bit deeper into the schools under these requirements. And Dr. Brown is leading this effort as well with her department, her area superintendents and principals. So, Dr. Brown.
Thank you. I'm back. So we're going to dig a little bit more into the targeted improvement plans and just the school improvement update. I know that I came, I think before you, maybe just a couple of months ago to give you a highlight. And as Dr. Cavazos referenced, much has changed since then. So this will be an update for you. So we'll do a quick update. We'll talk about expectations for overall D campuses and our second year F campuses, as well as comprehensive support. Talk to you about we'll show you a couple of presentations for the 2 campuses that require board approval, and then we'll talk about how we're building capacity for campuses. I think Trustee Walton referenced just the whole support of teachers and responsiveness and accountability to the learning with them as well, and so we'll talk about that. I do have a couple of folks here with me today. Dr. Turner, who's our Director of School Improvement, who's here, and she's also our DCSI, which is our liaison between the district and TEA. And then Melinda Schweig is here, and Melinda is a coordinator, and she also supports campuses, and we'll talk about specifically how they're supporting these specific campuses in our improvement opportunities that were shared with you in terms of our goal. So we already know this, right? We are rated on the A through F system, and so that's pretty much what we know. And so with that, we have 3 domains that are being referenced or being considered, and that's 1, student achievement, school progress, and closing the gaps. And that is how we get our overall ratings for our campuses. And I know we've talked about that a couple of times, so I won't spend much time there. But I will talk to you about the interventions for the campuses that are considered in need of improvement and how that's kind of morphed over the last couple of months. When we talked to you a couple of months ago, we had tens of schools that were required to write an improvement plan retained locally, and now we are down to just 17 improvement plans that are required to be approved by the 17 that are that only 2 require board approval. 5, I'm sorry. 5 are submitted to TEA, 2 require board approval, but we have many that we're going to retain here on in the district, which we have 12 of those that will retain locally. So if you look at the left-hand column, you'll see comprehensive year 2 re-identified schools. As I referenced before a long time ago, so I'm going to go through all this again for you. The comprehensive support schools basically are the schools that fall in the bottom 5% of the state. That's how they're identified. You also can become a comprehensive support school if your graduation rate is lower than 67%. So if you look here in that first column, it says comprehensive year 2 re-identified, and we have Venture there. And so Venture is there because of their graduation rate. They're re-identified as a school that failed to meet the 67%. So if there's an asterisk by that school, that means they're required to submit an improvement plan to TEA, and those have already been submitted as well. The second column, you have comprehensive year 2 progress. So Sam Houston last year was identified as a comprehensive support school, bottom 5%. They had an incredible gain over the last year. They went from a D campus to a high C. So they're now a school that made progress. So when you're comprehensive support, you get that label for 2 years. So Sam is still there as a second year, but they made incredible progress last year. The state still wants to make sure that we're monitoring and providing the supports they need, and so they do write an improvement plan as well. That third column, you have overall F year 2 campus, and we have SPEAR that's identified there, and I'll talk to you about SPEAR specifically and some of their areas of opportunity, how we're supporting that school to make sure that they're able to move the needle on student achievement. The next column is overall F year 2 comprehensive re-identified, and that is Short. So Short is a second year F campus, and they're also one of the lowest performing in the state in the bottom 5%. And so again, I'll speak specifically about Short and how that school's making progress and the goals that they have outlined for their year. Overall F, first year F school, you'll see that we have a line crossed through Berry Elementary School. So Dr. Barlow and his team were successful in appealing to TEA to re-examine some of the writing scores for Berry, and we won that appeal. And so now that school is taken off the list. So now we only have 2 schools that are F, and as you heard already, our plan is to have 0 F schools. So Berry will still go through the improvement planning process because they're still a D. They'll be a D campus, and it still be helpful for them to continue in their improvement path to make sure that they're making progress. And then we have our overall D campuses. These are first year D campuses. They're outlined there for you. Those are campuses that we are considering focus schools, and they're also schools that are part of our strategic support network, which I'll reference again in just a few moments to talk about what that specifically looks like. So I already talked to you about the Effective Schools Framework and the 5 factors or 5 levers that the schools were looking at to examine to determine where are the prioritized areas they wanted to focus on. So as a part of this process, they were able to self-assess where they are with their team, their instructional leadership team. Dr. Turner as well and Melinda were part of that process to really kind of evaluate what are some key practices that you're engaging in on your campus. We analyzed the present success, like how do we know that you're being successful, what evidence and artifacts. So it really was drilling down deeply and narrowing the focus to make sure we're identifying the right lever to focus on. And then they evaluated, as I mentioned, current implementation of those key practices. They would identify, has that work started yet? Do we still have a ways to go? Is it in place and functioning? So really let them take a really deep dive into those root causes as a part of their Effective Schools Framework audit. So here are the expectations for an overall D campuses, which you already have the list of those schools. If you see a check mark, that means we've already completed that process. So they have to form a campus leadership team. We know the principal cannot do it by herself or himself. So having members of your campus leadership team, including administrators, even having teachers who are part of that process, because collectively it's going to take everyone on board to be able to make the improvements, and engaging the relevant stakeholders and making sure that the targeted improvement plan is aligned and it's it's supporting the needs of the school. And then they held a public meeting to get input on the improvement plan. So from staff members or community members, what are some thoughts you have on ways that we can improve our schools to make sure that they're making improvements academically? So today, of course, we're presenting to you for approval, and then you'll see different months there from November, February, December through January, March, April. So during this time, basically, these campuses are creating, they have cycles that they're really looking at updates. So as we go through this process, how are we able to monitor the implementation of our improvement plan, to know if we have to make any adjustments, to look at evidence and data to ensure that we're right on track. And so we're monitoring for accountability and results during these months for these campuses. Now, these D campuses are not required to submit their improvement plans to the state. We keep them here locally, retain them. You have access to those plans, but it's still very important to us that they still have the plan. We're going through all the cycle updates to make sure they're making improvements, and our improvement team is really helping support those leaders in making those gains. So the two comprehensive support schools that I shared with you, Venture High School and Sam Houston, again, everything that has a check mark means it's been completed. We are on the move. So that campus leadership team has been established. We've gotten input from stakeholders, held a public meeting to get input as well. And then the Effective Schools Framework Diagnostic Audit was completed for Sam Houston and Venture recently. And now Berry is going to be off the list, so they will not be required. And so with that audit, it really is a very comprehensive look and examine all of these levers that we've identified, those 5. What do those practices look like? We contract with Region 11, our partner, to help engage in that audit. And then once the audit's completed, then the team comes together, the school improvement team, to debrief with the principal and leadership team to share the audit findings and kind of what the next steps are in making sure they're executing their plans appropriately. So ongoing, we have calls with TEA that Dr. Cavazos has been a part of, as well as our school improvement team, our principals as well, just to really be able to check in on the plans. How are they going? What supports do you need? And we just get sometimes some feedback from TEA, but mostly it's a time for us to really just highlight some of the progress that we're making with some of these campuses. So we do have regular touch points with TEA regarding these campuses. Again, the DCSI, which is Dr. Turner, continues to collect evidence, update the tip. It's just a continual process for these campuses who are in improvement. And so basically what you can see here is we're not leaving anything to chance. So we know that we have schools that need to improve. We've identified the areas of opportunity and the gaps in their performance, and then having specific structures in place to monitor for results and accountability. So now I'm going to talk about the second-year F schools, which are Spear and Short, and I'll share part of their plan with you. You have the entire plan, but I'll share a snippet with you. So when you're a second-year F school, again, similar process, getting the campus leadership team, getting results. The only thing really different about this is the turnaround plan that they have to put together for the 2020-21 school year. We don't have all the guidance yet on what that turnaround plan would look like, but it will be something that, of course, the board would have to approve for both Short and Spear. I know that you had an opportunity to review the TEA, the webinar, the PowerPoint webinar that gave you a little bit more insight into what that looks like. But these schools will write a TAP, a turnaround plan that will be implemented beginning in August of 2020. Additional requirements, again, they have the TEA calls as well. The draft turnaround plan will be in January. We'll bring it to you all in February for approval. By then, we'll have that outlined and identified what our areas of opportunity are as we launch into the 2020 school year. Lots of feedback from community. Sent out a survey to staff members and to parents to get input from them. And so we wanted them to know their feedback mattered, and they're the ones who live in the school or have students in the school. So what are some ways you think we might be able to strengthen our performance? So we talked about the Strategic Support Network, and so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how that has expanded. And so as a result of the number of schools that we've identified or that have been identified as D campuses, we know that we have more work to do to make sure we're moving the needle. So our school improvement expansion includes the addition of 7 more schools to the SSN this year. So we have 14 total schools on the left-hand side that are part of the SSN. What's really neat about this particular group, this network or feeder of schools, is they all have similar areas of opportunity. Some have made lots of progress over the last year, some are still struggling, but we found a way to really be able to kind of insulate them, to provide them more targeted and narrow support and focus. These are all of our schools that have a D or an F. They are in SSN, or they are a focus school, which means they're not really an SSN, but they're a D campus and they're in the school improvement process. So what are some things we can do to make sure we're still including them in professional learning, including them in coaching opportunities, and targeting our support for those campuses? So on the right-hand side, you'll see those campuses that we pulled in for focus. That'll be Crow, Hale, Larson, Morton, and Pope. So I talked about not being able to do this by yourself as the principal, and so the strategic support and for the focus schools as well include support from our instructional facilitators. They came to a previous board meeting. We have 4 of them who are focused on literacy, and they spend probably 80% of their time in schools working with instructional coaches, with deans, to be able to help build capacity in the administrators so they can better support and coach teachers in the classroom, provide that support to them. The Director of School Improvement, as I referenced, our coordinator, they serve as case managers for schools. So they basically work in concert with the area superintendent, Dr. Jarko, to identify how the schools are progressing on their target improvement plan, what are some areas of opportunity for them to be able to strengthen their support and be able to change outcomes for students. We also have an additional a person who's worked in our district last year. She worked as a DCSI, and we have someone, she's focusing on our D schools, and she's really coming in, just providing another lens and layer of support for the campus to be able to move the needle. And then, of course, we have our area superintendents who are continuing to provide their support for each of these campuses and at all the other campuses as well. So as it relates to capacity building, again, we prioritize campus support. Our area superintendents tier the schools, so they're able to see our priority 1 schools need to see me every week. Priority 2 may be every couple of weeks, and so there's an opportunity to really be able to differentiate your support for those campuses. Additional resources. Sometimes as you go through the year, you realize you need additional supplies or additional funding, and so we consider those on a case-by-case scenario. And if it's aligned to helping them meet their improvement performance goals, we definitely consider those requests and meet them most of the time. Professional learning opportunities, our school improvement team has done a great job of not only going into the schools to coach and support teachers, but they also have regular lunch and learns, as well as additional learning sessions for instructional coaches, administrators, and teachers to help continue to build their capacity. So that school improvement team, as I mentioned already, the IFs as well. And so ultimately, everything is about monitoring for results and accountability. And we do have a sense of urgency because we know that we have to move the needle on these schools. And so we'll do so with love and support, but also the accountability is going to be a very big part of that. Leading transformational change with much of this, when you have a school that's underperforming, as you know, it does require some tweaks and some adjustments. And it's important that we consider that and know that change is sometimes necessary for us to be able to get the results that we need. So in just a couple of quick months, we've already had over 200 touch points from the school improvement team and area superintendents to these focus schools. It's quite a bit of touch points, whether it's coaching, observing PLCs, providing support, leading professional learning. They've had great opportunities to interact and be able to show the support for the schools as they go through the improvement process. And school leadership is not alone. We partner with many departments, our teaching and learning team, professional learning, human resources, specialized learning. All these departments are in it to help support our campuses move the needle in student achievement. So we also have to celebrate early wins. That's important. Sometimes the work can get a little heavy, and the very end of what you're looking for seems so far away. And so it's important that we look at those short-term wins, celebrate them, and really look at a steady stream of successes. And so I wanted to share a couple of early wins with you all that we have so far. After our first round of common assessment data, if you look at the 3rd grade reading and 6th grade math, we had 70% of those campuses that showed an increase from last year's common assessment to this year in 3rd grade reading and 6th grade math. So that's quite a bit of schools that are already moving, and so we're excited to celebrate that. 3rd grade math, 75% of the campuses that we've identified as needs improvement they gained in the meets level performance of the common assessment. Fourth grade math, and fifth grade science, and sixth grade reading, 90% of the campuses had an increase in meets. Remember, we don't really look at approaches anymore. We look at meets because that's where the rubber hits the road. So we're really focusing and narrowing our focus there. English 1, 2, and Algebra 1, 100% of our secondary, our 2 high schools had improvement from Common Assessment 1 to 2. So again, when teachers and leaders see that they're getting results from the work they're doing, it just really gives you the impetus to keep and continue moving. So we celebrate this and we keep moving, right? Because we know we still have lots of work to do. So let's look at a couple of these targeted improvement plans. And this is not the full plan, as I mentioned. It's just a small snippet, but I wanted to kind of walk you through how they were able to do their root cause analysis to determine their areas of opportunity. So if you look at Short Elementary just is shy of 500 students. So it's a pretty small campus, 85% economically disadvantaged. You can see the other numbers there. 1/4 of them are English language learners or are English learners. And with the accountability for Short, Short is a second-year F school, and you can see where our overall rating was for Short. Short fell just a point shy of really being able to move to Met Standard School. We already are seeing many successes at this campus already in just the first couple of months of school. So we're very encouraged by the progress we're seeing at Short. But as a part of that process, they had to engage in a self-assessment, as I mentioned. So if you look at that self-assessment, they were able to say, okay, what are some things that we're really doing pretty well? And then what are some things we really have to shore up to make sure that we're able to make improvements? So the teachers are already creating lesson plans. These are actually quotes from the self-assessment, so I won't read those to you, but it just kind of shows you how they're able to really go in and say, what are some things we're doing pretty well, and where might some gaps be that we need to shore up? So they pretty much put a tracking system in place to monitor progress of all students. Both these campuses that I'm talking to you about today have had new leaders in the last 2 years. And Short has a new leader. Katina Martinez is her second year, and Selena Elizondo for Spear. This is her second year there at that campus. And so that first year, a lot of getting oriented to the campus, knowing what's happening, where are their strengths, where are their opportunities, and now we know. Let's go ahead and make sure we're making movements with these campuses. So for the essential actions, the focus areas, both these campuses chose the same focus areas. And I referenced that with Trustee Wilbanks earlier. Objective-driven daily lesson plans with formative assessments. Not only the planning, as Trustee Walton mentioned, but also the execution of the lesson and making sure they have the support in reteaching what needs to be taught. And then 5.3, data-driven instruction. So their annual outcome is they want to move from a 58 to at least a 70. We have minimum there because we're always shooting for higher than that, but that would get this campus out of the F range into the C range. And by doing that, we would make sure that all of these student groups that have been identified will reach their individual performance target as well. So in looking at essential actions or outcomes, each of these levers have specific actions they have to engage in. So in lesson planning, making sure that our general ed and SPED classrooms have rigorous and differentiated lesson plans daily. DDI 5.3 is making sure that as teachers are planning, they understand the depth and complexity of their TEKs. So what is the TEK asking our students to be able to learn and be able to do as a result of the lesson? And then making sure that teachers are looking at student work exemplars. So you can see what's working well with that student. Where might there be a misconception? Where might I need to reteach because there's a gap in that student's learning? Here are some key actions, targeted feedback for teachers, looking at their lesson plans, where are some areas where you might want to shore up. Again, it's not as much about the plan as it is the execution, but the lesson design is going to be a very important part of that as well. Making sure that we're monitoring progress of every single student. As we look at these campuses in all of our schools, you all, we're really making sure that every single student is making progress. So the days are gone that we're looking at only one student group or we're looking at every single student because every student has to grow in our system. And then monitoring progress of campus goals. I referenced last time I visited with you all the horizontal laser team, which really provides individual coaching to teachers. Actually, at these two campuses, every single teacher on this campus, K6, has a coach that really supports them around best practices around collaboration, communication, small group instruction, the learner environment, which is what we talked about a little bit earlier, and then of course balanced literacy. So here are just some specific actions that Short is taking. A lot more than this, you know, in the plan. We wanted to highlight a few of those that they were doing really pretty well. Their data from the first common assessment is trending really, really super positive. We're very excited about the structures that have been put in place there, and we certainly look for that school to be off the F list. So let's talk about Spear Elementary. Spear is a little bit larger. So Spear has 721 students, 96% economically disadvantaged. And if you look at that English learners percentage, 66% of the students are English learners. So the implications for that are great. It's very important that at this campus, because of the high number, that we're very, very focused on making sure those learners have the experience of speaking, listening, reading, and writing across the board. And that's an area of opportunity for us at Spear. So here's Spear's accountability, which I'll share with you again. Overall, F campus, just shy of a 60. They actually ended up earning a 59. So on their self-assessment, again, they talked about lesson planning and formative assessment. So it's not just about planning and executing a lesson, but how are you really checking progress along the way to make sure students are showing mastery of their learning, and then showing where there might be some gaps in their understanding or deficiencies there. Focusing on Tier 1 instruction, not spending all of our time in tutoring groups, but what are we focused on that first round of instruction? How can we make sure that's solid for our students, and making sure our teachers are really supported in that process of delivering those quality lessons? And then for data-driven instruction, again, making sure our PLCs are utilized successfully, that we're looking at data, that we're looking at student exemplars, student work, to make sure that we have an in-depth understanding of where our students are and where they need to go. So again, the same two essential actions and focus areas around 5.1 and 5.3. So their outcome, they're looking to go from a 59 to at least a 70. And again, if they reach that target, every single student group would make the mark. Sorry. So essential actions there, developing objective-driven lesson plans. Again, you'll see that's a very common theme in both of these plans, as well as other plans that we have in our district. Just making sure that teachers are getting feedback, that they're supported, working side by side with them to help them understand and just support them in their lesson design and delivery. Making sure our teachers understand the DDI process, the know and show development process is important. And making sure that lesson plans are aligned to the grade level SCs, which are the SCs. Oh my gosh, I just had a blank. I just went blank. SCs, student expectations. Must be getting late. I went blank a little bit. So those key actions, you guys, looking at gradual release of responsibilities, really making sure that teachers understand the I do, we do, you do learning process. And that teachers are, again, engaged in solid balanced literacy practices and getting targeted feedback regarding their lesson designs. So I mentioned that the district has expectations, and there are commitments that we have as a part of these targeted improvement plans. And so area superintendents and Dr. Turner and Melinda will also provide feedback to principals during their one-on-one meetings to make sure that they're observing classrooms together, and they're looking at campus data, district assessments to make sure they're on track. Making sure that they're supporting the campus principal and providing input during their instructional leadership team meetings to make sure that they're on track as well and focused on the right areas. And then making sure that principals are monitoring the instructional program and giving bite-sized feedback. We don't want them giving a bunch of things to be able to correct one small thing and one small fix to be able to strengthen the lesson. And also provide feedback on DDI practices, which is a part of 5.3. We've been engaged in DDI work for the last couple of years. This year we're going a lot deeper. We're involving campus teams. It's not just the principal, but the campus team being involved in that to make sure that they're having the support they need, they understand the processes and know about how to improve their reteach plans as well. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Turner led a level 2 training with principals around data-driven instructional practices, really just kind of asking them, what else do you need to know, and how can we support you in making sure that you have every piece of information that you need to successfully implement DDI meetings at your campuses. So I gave you a lot of information today to talk about these two particular campuses, but I wanted to really highlight the global nature of the work that we're doing to move these schools, whether it's targeted PD in our strategic support network, targeted support of lesson planning and design and delivery, supporting PLCs in the DDI process. Our school improvement team are working hand in hand with teachers and principals to make sure we're changing outcomes for kids, and that's our plan. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brown. Do I have questions from any of my colleagues? Ms. Walton.
Thank you, President Mays. What's the turnover rate with students at these campuses?
Trustee Walton, I don't know the exact percentage of the mobility rate. I'm not really sure of those. Typically, those schools are a little bit higher than other schools, but I can't give you a specific number. I'm happy to get that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Hopefully you'll make a note for our secretary on that request. Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Mays. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for all the information. I feel like you should have just done a 360 and said, I'm back, here I go. The Strategic Support Network, it was last year that it began.
Yes.
What can you, and I do like the early wins that you put there as far as moving forward this year. Overall, whether it is objective or subjective, as far as measures, its overall success, you feel?
The strategic support network, absolutely. Absolutely. We're able to narrow, we're supporting all of the schools, but these specific schools have access to additional resources. They have access to additional human personnel who's able to support them. And we're just seeing a lot more targeted delivery of instruction at some of these campuses as well. We have room to grow, so we're not. I don't want you to feel like it's all great. We have a lot of work to do, but they're making a lot of progress, and we have people in the buildings who are committed to the work, which is very important.
Yeah, and I appreciate with those enhancements, the focus schools and adding those schools from a human resource standpoint. Are you feeling stretched thin, or are you okay as far as the number of people that are allocated and the time that they're allocating to it with those touch points as an example? Do you foresee that, yeah, we're strong, everything's good, or this is something we're going to have to redistribute or ask for maybe additional things in the budget going forward?
So right now, I think we're good because we've been able to add additional staff and support this year for the schools that we have. The instructional facilitators are new, as well as our director of school improvement. So we already are, adding additional staff to support those schools. And then we've been very proactive. So as we saw the data trending downward, and we didn't want to wait until the end to say, oh, now we need additional assistant principal or additional support with counselor, we were able to identify those early on and provide that support for the teachers and for the campuses. So I feel like right now we're good. We're able to identify who has the case managers for those schools, pour the support in there, and I think we have what we need right now, so we're good.
Good, good. And final question is, I can only imagine, I don't know in reality, but I would suspect that the morale would be different at those campuses than a campus that is not having to work at this heavy lift of improvement. So the morale of the teachers, the administrators. So what is it? Is it the same or lower maybe than what you would see, what your area superintendents are seeing in other campuses? B, what actions are in place to try to help boost that if it is lower?
So I will say, as I referenced the transformational change and really how you're leading change, really supporting principals and making sure they understand that it is a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift for principals too. But how are you still providing support fairness, appreciation to those staff members who are really on the boots on the ground, doing the heavy lifting. So I would not say the morale is necessarily lower. I think we have really good leaders in those schools who are able to kind of keep folks lifted up to do the heavy lifting, but it's something we have to be very intentional about. So we can't leave it to chance. We have to make sure that we're intentional. We have those conversations, checkpoints. We're rounding with our staff to get input about how things are going and make adjustments because it's heavy work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate that. And the, what was it, the win small, win early, win often, that is very similar. I tell people, used it with my children all the time, just you have the mountain in front of you. Don't think about getting to the top. It's one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, and that's exactly what you're doing. So hopefully that'll keep that morale and that focus there with those spirits lifted. Yes. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. I don't see any other buttons. Thank you very much, Dr. Brown, Dr. Turner, Ms. Swag. Thank you very much for what you've done. Just some key points. One, kind of echo what Dr. Reich said. Short-term wins, I think that's awesome to recognize those things because you're not going to get to that full point unless you've had all those little wins. So very important to recognize, and I really like that idea. I also like the idea of the proactive approach. You know, if you see that trend going that way, y'all are already stepping in to provide the help that's needed and find out exactly what's needed. So I really appreciate that. I do have a question on venture.
Okay.
So based on the model of that school, how do they track the graduation rates? For instance, for students that are coming in and maybe they decide to go back to their home campus and graduate from there, how does that count? So just really wondering, how does that work for venture?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're actually we're looking at that right now. Dr. McDonald is actually the area superintendent who has venture, who's leading that school. But looking at the students who we are bringing in, where they are with their credits, how close they are to graduating, I think those are all key things that we're examining right now to make sure that we are providing the support needed to those kids, those students, and also making sure we get the outcomes we need. Because the design of the school to take students who are undercredited, I mean, you're going to have more of a gap there that you need to fill. So being strategic and how we're supporting those students and bringing them in is something that we're examining right now. And Dr. McDonald has already looked at a couple of structures that need some additional support and tweaking probably.
Okay.
But it's definitely on our radar for that reason.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Hogg. Oh, you want me to actually allow you to speak on the mic?
There we go.
There you go.
Ms. Brown, is that something, I know TEA sometimes has special rules and special judgments. Is that something we need to put on our legislative agenda to start pushing as we are coming in the interim to add that in? Because I know for special, so Ms. Walton, can you add that to follow-ups to add to our, just add venture, or maybe, I don't want to call it alternative high schools, but consideration of at-risk high schools maybe is a way to, possible waivers and legislative. We'll know what to do with that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, and I can say this because my mic's on, but the purpose for creating venture is to make sure that those students do graduate, even if it's not the same way. So, yeah. So anyway, I just think that's a good question to make sure that venture and those students that are graduating are getting the credit that really is due for them.
Absolutely.
Okay. Dr. Reich?
Ah, there we go.
It's not me.
I didn't touch anything, I swear. So yeah, that was one of the comments that I was going to make, that there's different caveats with our accountability system that are flawed like that. Venture is a perfect example. I don't know that it's tied into accountability, but when we were at Council of Great City Schools, when we were at a presentation about English language learners, and the same kind of thing. That system is designed to get them out. Well, what does that make the ELL program look like? It looks like a failure, but it's not. It's actually very successful, but there's no metric in place to assess that. So, yeah, I definitely think those are the types of things that we need to try to if we need it legislated, we can certainly add to that. So based on all of the discussion and the excellent presentation and work from Dr. Brown, I would move then that we accept the target improvement plans for the years and campuses stated on the agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so I've got a motion by Dr. Reich, a second by Mr. Hogg. Any discussion? Please vote. Okay, so we've got 6-4 and 1 abstain. So motion passes. Thank you very much again, Dr. Brown.
President, actually,
Yes.
since we're one member down, it's 5 voting for and 1.
Right. Oh, did I say another
You
number?
said 6 and 1.
I'm sorry. I look over and I see him sitting here. Okay, so we've got 5 in the affirmative and 1 abstention. Don't tell anybody. Okay, so next on our agenda are items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda. Are there any items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda? Okay, so seeing none. Ms. Powell, will you please share bids with us?
President Mays, board members, Dr. Cavazos, we have 3 bids on the agenda this evening, and in all 3 cases, the administration recommends the low bids and the bids that represent the best value to the district. We also have donations to report. Tonight, we present donations totaling $79,982, and that brings the year-to-date total to $299,297.
Very good. Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Ms. Walton,
I move we approve the consent agenda.
have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Got a motion by Ms. Walton, a second by Ms. Fowler. Are there any discussions? If not, please vote. All present vote in the affirmative. Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Powell. Okay, so we now move to our open forum for non-agenda items. I do see that we have 1 card. Okay, now we come to our open forum for non-agenda items. The second open forum segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to address the trustees on any subject except personnel. This is not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not reply to the speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. I have 1 card from our audience. When your name is called, please step to the podium. You will have 5 minutes to speak. A lighted timer on the podium will assist you in pacing your presentation. A yellow light will illuminate when there is 1 minute left for you to complete your presentation. When the red light comes on and the buzzer sounds, please end your presentation. I have a card from Mr. David Heath, subject substitutes in the fill rate.
Thank you. I've come here tonight to bring up the matter of the subsystem and lack of coverage in many campuses in AISD, resulting in teachers covering classes. Many teachers have lost valuable time covering classes in lieu of attending PLCs or missing personal planning time when they are required to cover a class in which no substitute teacher has shown up. I've heard from my sources in UEA that AISD pays more for subs at particular campuses when sub-fill rate falls below 80%. Whoever came up with this number has a lot to answer for, as this has led to an increase teacher stress on several campuses. At my campus, Carter, it has not been unusual for people to cover classes for 3 days in a row, thus only seeing their PLCs at most 2 days for that week, or losing a conference altogether, several conferences. If you'll please note as I go through numbers, we have a total of 77 faculty members at my school, of which 70 can and are used for classroom coverage from time to time. And I'd like to start in month of September. Monday, September 16th, we had 11 teachers out. We had 6 substitutes pick up. 27 teachers out of that 70 I said had to cover classes. On Thursday, September 19th, we had 6 teachers out, 2 substitutes showed up, and 23 ended up covering other classes. Tuesday, September 24th, 13 out, 5 substitutes showed up. 34 ended up covering. Wednesday, September 25th, 14 out, 6 subs showed up. 21 ended up covering. On Monday, September 30th, 8 teachers were out, 4 substitutes showed up. 7 ended up covering. October the 1st, 6 out, 2 subs showed out, 5 ended up covering. Friday, October the 4th, 6 out, 2 showed up, 15 ended up covering. I'll skip to some of the bigger numbers here. Thursday, October 10th, 10 out, 6 subs showed up, 10 ended up covering, 10 teachers covering. And the 17th, 8 out, 4 showed up, 13 ended up covering. The 21st, 7 out, 2 subs showed up, 26 teachers ended up covering. 22nd, 4 out, 2 subs, 8 covered. Then we had on the 23rd, 6 out, 3 showed up, 17 covered. That Thursday, 6 out, 4 showed up, 15 covering. That Friday, 12 out, 5 subs showed up, 28 teachers covering. October the 28th, 12 out, 2 subs showed up, 47 teachers covering. On 10/29, 11 out, 4 showed up, 15 ended up covering. That Wednesday, 10 out, 4 showed up, 25 ended up covering. I haven't even gotten to November. I would like to note that of only one of these dates, did they hit that 8%? I'm asking, no, I'm begging, that something be done to change the policy when we give assistance to campuses. We need to look at actual numbers of subs that are not showing up instead of a percentage. We also need to find a way to get ahead of the problem in order to provide some relief. I mean, after all, it's not spring yet. It would be nice to designate at least one permanent substitute to each campus instead of just increasing the sub pay by a matter of $10. I would also ask that campus administrators be discouraged from pulling out entire departments for training during these times due to the considerable drain it puts on the subsystem. At any rate, some relief is better than no relief. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. I would like to make a request from the district, if we could please, the board be provided with what the fill rate is across the district.
Absolutely.
Individual campus.
Yes,
Yep, absolutely.
by individual campuses. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is Superintendent's Report. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mays. I'd like to share some information about our district. First, I want to sincere thank you to our community for showing up to vote and supporting the bond 2019. We are certainly excited to start moving forward in these projects. It builds upon our 2014 bond. Our students are very fortunate, as I've mentioned before, to have the support of a community that will continue to invest in them and invest in our schools to have their success in the front of their mind. Next, our Parent and Community Engagement Department helped us host our volunteer stakeholder group for our fine arts and athletic stakeholders for the last couple of weeks. Again, these groups are vital to the success of our students. So I want to thank, again, Aaron Perales and his department, the whole team, for organizing these and everybody who attended. Rankin Elementary turned 60 this year and celebrated by hosting current and former students. Their dancers performed very well. Many people came up to look at the pictures from the past, and former employees were there. Rankin had a very good turnout and a very successful celebration of their anniversary. The Transformation Through Innovation Grant Showcase was a wonderful evening where students had the chance to show off their use of technology resources in the classroom thanks to the TI grant. And I want to thank all the teachers who go above and beyond in integrating technology in a very innovative way in their classrooms, and congratulations to all the TI grant winners. The first ever Fall Festival was held at the Ag Science Center. I think maybe we had some people attend that can have a little context to this, but they had a live band, face painting, games, and plenty of opportunity for pictures, as you can tell. I want to thank all our staff at the Ag Science Center. What a program and what a transformational opportunity for our students. So thank you to them and everyone who attended. October was National Principals Month, and I want to take the opportunity to say thank you again to all our principals and their hard work. We know that they're vital to the success of our students and our staff and our campuses. Dr. Brown hosted and the area superintendents hosted a luncheon there at the Career Tech Center for the principals, so show some appreciation for them. Our Dads Engaged for Excellence campaign is encouraging all fathers and father figures to go out and help students this year, and so I had the opportunity to visit with them, and Aaron Perales' group hosted a breakfast. Thank you to all the dads and dad leaders who came to that event, and thank you overall for your involvement in our schools. Finally, yesterday we participated in the topping out ceremony at the new Fine Arts and Athletics Complex, and those are impressive buildings that are coming up. We signed that beam as part of this event and celebration, also celebrating the safety of the workers that work on these projects, and so a lot of smiles there on that picture. And I think we're actually in the pool area. The shallow end, I'm kidding, it's not the shallow end, but it is the pool area, and it is a massive kind of scene in that facility. And so I want to thank certainly everyone who's involved in that project, and again, an opportunity for our students. And so that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Do I have any reports from trustees? Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Mays. I just wanted to reiterate to the community, to this board, and to the district for all of the education, all the work that went into putting the information out on the bond. And it was a huge, heavy lift, and now the real work begins. So just thank you to my colleagues for everything that you guys have done. You're a great team. It's an honor to be part of it. And so excited to see the continued support and affirmation from the community that we are all on the same page, wanting to move forward in our upward trajectory. The only other thing that I would say is that wasn't mentioned in Dr. Cavazos' report was the Council of Great City Schools conference that we did mostly attend, and it was a great opportunity. For those that don't know, yeah, once you got there, that's right, Miss Walton, there was definitely some creative airline flights and things that went on to get there and leaving, but besides that, great opportunity to share pearls as well as gain some insights and pearls from other districts around the country, other large urban districts. We're part of that group and that cohort, and I think there were some things that we were able to pick up. Ultimately, I'm still very proud of the work that's going on in this district. From a governance standpoint as well as an operations standpoint, we're setting a great bar and a great standard as a benchmark for those other districts around the country. So not just around the state, but around the nation. So I just appreciate everybody for your work and your support and participation in heading there in the midst of everything we're doing with the bond work at the same time. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Any other lights? Okay. I would like to just also say thank you to the community of Arlington ISD for supporting the 2019 bond. Just overall appreciate the support of the public education system here in Arlington. Access and opportunity is still very, very important, and I definitely still 100% believe that this bond is part of it. I just have to read this Benjamin Franklin, Dr. Brown, thank you so much for putting it, because it goes right along with it. Without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. That is a very powerful statement, and I think that it's very indicative of exactly what this district is doing at this time. Also, just from Arlington ISD to the community ISD in Collin County, we are grieving with you with the loss of their 4 students, and prayers will continue to go out from our district to yours and to that entire community. Ms. Secretary, do we have any items to consider?
Oh, button.
Please.
Oh, thank you. Yes, ma'am, we have 3. We have requested that the administration provide us mobility rates for students at Spear and Short. We want to probably ask one of our groups to look at and give some consideration to a legislative agenda item for venture-type schools, waivers or something, ESL students, that maybe we could have it better fit how well they're doing. And 3, we would request the substitute fill rate by individual campuses for, I guess, the months that we've had school so far. Okay. I believe that's it.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Secretary. It is now 9:44, and we will now move into a closed session pursuant to Section 55071 through Section 551084. And we will not be returning back into open session. Our 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Acts for the topics that were set forth in your agenda. It is now 9:44. Thank you.